That's right. When you go along with evil and corruption and don't at least recognize it, you're turning away. It's a sin. And you're allowing everything to rot around you. A nightmare world is being built, and at the middle of it is...
When you look at what IBM talks about, and I fly a lot, so I've gone through a lot of airports, and they've got this big smarter planet, you know, up on all the airports up high. They've got all these billboards. It must cost them millions to put all this up about the smarter planet. And the smarter planet's built on RFID. It's built on all of this sensor network. And they talk about the planetary skin, that the actual planet will develop a skin and be able to sense everything that occurs on it. The Internet of Things, which is the RFID network that I've been fighting all these years, the Internet of Things is the idea that every physical object would be reporting home to the global brain, that you would have this consciousness that would be aware of everything, every tree in every forest, every frog in every pond, every move that you make, every piece of paper you pick up, all of it would be monitored and observed by this centralized brain. And the way they're going to do it is through the RFID system. So somehow they're going to put, and they've been talking about this since 2003, put tiny sensors on every physical object, build it right into every physical object on the globe, so that as the thing begins to, as the consciousness sort of comes in and occupies the infrastructure that's been built for it, that consciousness will use those as sort of nerve endings to know everything. And the scariest thing that I think I've heard all year is the spray-on nanotechnology antennas. So there is a company, they're called, I want to say Camtech, C-H-A-M or
that you'll run drones with.
Yeah, so this is actually a different one. This is a surveillance technology or an antenna technology. So let's say, for example, Alex, right now that everything in this room had an RFID tag, or your shirt, your underwear, my top, my shoes, whatever, had an RFID tag, and we went out into the woods. We couldn't be tracked.
There it is.
Because there's no reader. There you go. That's it. Spray-on antenna, wireless in a can. So what these guys have developed, and if you scroll down, you'll see a picture of a tree. All right, see that tree there? It'd be great if you could zoom in and see that it just looks like a regular tree. So there are military antennas that cost a fortune, and they lug them out into Afghanistan so that they can transmit to airplanes or to base stations. What they can do now is take this spray-on antenna, spray it on the tree, and the tree itself becomes the antenna that broadcasts and transmits. You could do this to every tree in the forest, and now you and I are walking through the woods, and the trees are actually monitoring us, and they have a range these trees can send to a passing airplane. And eventually they will be able to transmit to satellites. So what this has done is it's taken the RFID thing that I've been working on all these years. And the piece I've been working on is they want to put the chips on everything. But the real issue is, where are the readers? And once you can do this, you can actually, you could spray the wall. You could paint the walls with this. You could cover every surface on planet Earth.
Smart dust.
And track everything all the time. Well, the dust is the trackable part.
These are the antennas.
These are the receivers.
Keep going.
So anything you can paint with this technology, anything you can paint with this would be capable of picking up all of your signals and emissions.
Did you know Clifford Carnicom, just to interrupt, I have to, I can't help it. Clifford Carnicom told me like 13 years ago on air, and of course he worked, I think it was the Forest Service, and he wouldn't say everything off air, and then he wouldn't go back on shows anymore. He kind of disappeared, I guess because of threats, is what I heard. He said they're spraying the aluminum dioxide to get into the trees, and they're going to drop some type of other reading substance on it later, but that's all I was told. And he had like Department of Energy sources. And I heard that, and I thought, that's a little out there. And then it just clicked when you were saying that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, yeah, it would be possible. You could fly over a forest of trees with this dust and turn your trees into antennas that would actually be broadcasting up to space. So, and the problem with this is it's invisible. You would never know that this paint was even underneath the wall paint of a room that you were in, and then that room could become an actual sort of RFID chamber picking up all these signals. So when we're talking about this web, and something shocked me the other day, it was the realization that we've only had iPhones since 2006 or 2007. I want to say it was 2007 that was introduced. Can you believe that it's only been 6 years that this technology came out?
And they're ubiquitous. It's like part of your body.
Everyone is staring into the device and clicking and thumbing. And if you don't have one, you're behind the times. This is a 6-year-old technology, Alex. And so now you say, well, if we're all carrying around now our unique sort of global brain connectors because we're checking into this thing that's linking us to the global brain, and now all they have to do is build the remainder of the infrastructure, and it's done.
And then launch the drones to kill us.
No, there's many ways they can kill us. Drones are just one.
And that's why Bill Joy, I go back to that 1,000 times, wrote Why the Future Doesn't Need Us back in 2000 in April. And he said, I went to an elite conference with other billionaires, and we said, do we kill everybody or just let people play video games and have a good time? And the answer was, that's bad for the earth. We're going to kill everybody. And then their answer is, we tell you we're going to kill you and you don't care. Well, you know what? I care and you care.
Yeah, and one of the ways that they're killing people, and I've observed this, if you go into even just a standard supermarket and you look at the extra large tub of peanut butter versus the little small thing of peanut butter, the extra large tub of peanut butter, which is meant for the big prodigious families, contains horrible ingredients that aren't in the small container. I've been noticing this lately, that the bulk containers...
No, the technocracy admits they've done that for themselves as escape doors.
Absolutely.
But as they shut it down, the eugenicists are now discovering, first it was 80% they were going to kill. Then it was 90% in their literature. Now they're going, actually, we're going to kill 99%. And so the people that are part of it are begging, what do I do to be part of that? Wow. And this is a whole cult where they get off. I'll see them out in public. I go, you're a professor, aren't you? You're a eugenicist. I'm not talking to you, Jones. This happened 2 weeks ago at a coffee shop because I could tell the guy was looking at me going, oh, yeah. And I went, you feel powerful because you're in on this. He was like, get away from me. But, I mean, the point is they're out there like a cult. It's like body snatchers.
Yeah, and even Nancy Pelosi, what was the first thing she did when she got elected to Congress? She redid the congressional dining hall to be all organic food and to get rid of all of the high fructose
Monsanto, the communist Chinese, all the elites are obsessed. But listen, you're asking me questions. Keep rolling with all these points.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely the elite, if you want to call them that. I call them the pond scum. They're the people who think they're the cream that has risen to the top of the milk, but they're really...
They're the fools that think they won't reap what they sow. They're the fools think that they can do evil and get away with it.
Well, and they view themselves, and I know this because, you know, I went to Harvard, and I go to a lot of these meetings and a lot of these government meetings and such, and they really do view themselves as being smarter than everybody else and really being in a position to kind of direct everyone else's lives. So, you know, the pond scum, the algae that chokes out the oxygen for all the rest of us, this really is their view. And they have built escape hatches. They don't send their kids to government schools. They send their kids to elite prep schools.
With armed guards.
With armed guards. And they don't eat the food that they expect the rest of us to eat. One of my favorite stories was when John Kerry was doing a promotional, you know, smile and greet at Wendy's restaurant. And there he was, and he's shaking hands with the person in the Wendy's apron, whatever. And they put the food in front of him, and he wouldn't touch it. Wouldn't touch it, wouldn't put a bite in his mouth. And then afterwards, this got written up because they said, oh, he's an elitist. Because afterwards, he went out and got into his little mobile van, and the local country club brought him a 4-course meal. But the fact that he wouldn't even put it to his lips, you would think at least for a photo opportunity.
He'd eat one. He'd eat one.
Journalism was, you know, that the journalists were watching you, the cameras were on you. You'd at least take a bite. But he didn't even touch it. And who's he married to? Teresa Heinz of Heinz. And what does Heinz do? They're part of the whole system that provides the food. And
they're all eugenicists. You can take any of these people and research what they give money to because their charity stuff is public. It's all the eugenics groups. Whenever the Secretary of Treasury got like $200 million himself of bailout money and got the waiver from himself to do it, they went and looked and he gave like half the money to eugenics organizations. I mean, they are dedicated to this.
That's wild. That's wild.
Did you hear about Zuckerberg giving money to the Life Extension Group?
Yes.
Yeah, no, this is their deal.
Those are the folks who want to live forever because that's the animating spirit behind all of this. There's an animating spirit that was put in motion way back in the Garden of Eden. You know, what was the promise that the serpent made to Eve?
I'll make you God.
You will have the power. You will have the knowledge of good and evil. And, of course, God said, well, if you do that, you'll surely die. And he meant if you bite into the apple and embrace the technology, the knowledge that's going to come from that, your whole species is going to die. He didn't mean Adam and Eve right then. He meant your entire community of the future is going to die. If you become, because Satan can't create, he has to use God's creations made in the image of the Creator. The devil isn't creative. He is literally using us to build his master temple. Indeed. And that's really how I view it. And I've been asked before, the people who are developing these technologies, do they sit around and worship black candles and have pentagrams? And, of course, you've exposed that some of them do. But in my experience, many of them are just day-to-day trying to pay their bills, trying to pay their mortgage. Yeah, but at the very top, they don't worship the devil. They worship the beautiful white angel. And they believe there's Lucifer, but they see it as the angel of light, and that no, Lucifer's really God, and this is a bad creation, and we've got to do this to save the earth.
and they'll work 20 hours a day to bring Lucifer in.
And then you look at the fruit of it, though, because the Bible tells us
I agree. It's horrible.
To judge a tree by its fruit. And so you can say, what is the fruit? And I challenge anyone out there to name a technology that's really gotten a hold that doesn't have a downside. You know, we open our book Spy Chips talking about, we have a quote from C.P. Snow, a New York Times journalist, and he says, technology is a queer thing. It gives you great gifts with one hand, and it stabs you in the back with the other. And it really does feel that way. You look at everything from pesticides. You know, our grandparents thought in the 50s that better living through chemistry, that was going to save us. It was going to eradicate the mosquitoes with DDT. And look at the outcome of that. We don't have birds. We don't have butterflies. We don't have diversity.
And we're not living as long as we used to.
Wait, we have Monsanto. Exactly. So you tie all that in. What did the pesticides lead to? Well, they led to the rise of Monsanto.
And this is all just the launch pad. The reason people are freaking out is the new age, and not the one that people talk about, the new technological hyper dark age, where it's a technocracy dark age against the spirit. It's here, and everything we've seen built up, we're now at the edge of the cliff. Now the real plunge is about to happen. And that's why everybody's like, because deep down the spirit's going, Mayday.
People feel it. They absolutely feel it. And that's why whenever somebody says, well, why are you fighting this? You know, if it's inevitable, if you've got your biblical beliefs, why would you fight against it? It's going to happen. And my response to that is we're not going to stop it. I mean, as much as I hate to say that, I feel like the years that I've battled, the last 13 years, that I've fought against RFID and all these privacy invading technologies, it's like there's been a mudslide coming down the hill, and I stood and I held my ground with my piece of plywood, and I held firm ground, but it just went around me. It's coming anyway. So we can hold our little pieces, and I encourage everybody to do that, because the longer we can hold a space for our family, for our children, for the future, for posterity, the better, and the more people we can inform. But ultimately, this stuff is going to be a mudslide rolling down the hill. And the real answer to that, then, is the same answer back in the Garden of Eden. I view us as being like the crew of the Titanic. We struck an iceberg way back when Eve bit into that apple. We've been taking on water ever since. The ship is going down, and we're not going to stop it. But when you look at the actual Titanic, the reason so many people drowned, do you know that those lifeboats were half empty?
They hadn't trained, they didn't know, and they told the poor, stay down there while the elite went to the escape hatch.
They did.
That's why the patriots need to move to the lifeboats right now.
Absolutely.
Long before everybody else does. The elites have already moved to the country and moved to the middle of nowhere with armed guards. Whoever can, even you've got to get ready, folks.
And I think a big part of that, too, is the job that you and I do, which is a job of sounding the alarm, because the crew on the Titanic didn't do a very good job, did they? Because people kept dancing. They didn't want to jump out into the dark cold in a boat.
They were in denial.
Believe it.
It was a great example of learned helplessness or denial about a situation you're in.
But this ship couldn't possibly sink. Look, the lights are on, the music is playing. And I think a lot of people still have that attitude today. Look, I still have my video games.
And I'm like, cancer's up 3,000%. They're like, never mind. And we'll be right back. Incredible. Stay with us.